Japan was a trip of a lifetime. Though I've been there several times, each time provides a new experience, a new lens, a new opportunity. I think I was lucky. I came in with a mindset that was both fairly familiar and yet open for anything. The sights, the hustle, the bustle, the bright lights, the perfect dance of people in the crowded streets, the smell of delicious food, the calm smile and bowed heads. Grace, practice, and patience permeates Japan. This time, my omoi was to feel the fleeting nature of Japan that it embraces so well, with the sakura, with the hanami festivals, those little cherry blossoms falling from the sky. This time they weren't there, but I wanted to feel the beauty, to know that even though I'm only there for a week or two, that we only have one life. I wanted to know how to embrace it, to breathe it in fully. 2 questions I had. My topic addresses the issue of why sweat the details when things fade. Because it creates order, because it creates balance. Why do children clean classrooms as part of a daily ritual? So my first question was very much a cultural or social cultural experience. My next question very much was an issue of motivation. When it comes to teaching, I wanted to know how students interacted with superiors, and it held the same ring of authority if they were co-creators, as Freire would say, of their knowledge. So the question really was, did they work in harmony together as it seemed Japan did as a whole? Or was there some sense of superiority of one over the other? So the first question, why is there such a care to the small, often overlooked aspects seen in America, like cleanliness? Everything in Japan seems to be spotless, no trash cans, and yet time seems to be so treasured. What's the point of taking such extra time and care? Why was the man at 5 a.m. in Kyoto cleaning a little tucked away part of the shrine that no one could likely ever see? First, what I've concluded based on my studies and talking with the professor and also questioning, there is a sense of cultural obligation. Second, deeper, when I asked, there's a value of nationalism, of keeping Japan clean, healthy, and flourishing. A man on my way to a hostel on a walk beside me, after several minutes of walking together, he bent down over a plant and sprayed some water on it, clearly not his own. Last, not because it's the right thing to do, but because it's a thing that if you think about it from someone else's point of view, it's empathy. To help that man's plant grow, to help that pregnant woman on a bus or train sit down, to offer coin when I ran out on my way to the next stop on a train. These were all aspects of empathy. And for my second question, inside the schools we watched as a principal taught a lesson. This was the most obvious observation of someone who was in a position of power or authority, showing that he's not above teaching, above showing his best to foreign students on how a lesson in Japan is taught. Students listened attentively, wrote quickly, were quiet, and shot hands up dutifully when questions were asked. This all showed me that while there are words like sama and sensei that show superiority and respect, it is done out of a sense of desire for one and deference to show that respect. And roles are not so clearly delineated as they are in America. Bosses take co-workers out for drinks on a regular basis. The culture promotes integration and empathy and united purpose. My reflections. Japan was a place of peace and culture and reciprocity. I think that what I learned most was that while you do your best to blend in with another culture, to assimilate and not offend, deep down I did feel an outsider. I found that odd as I've been there 3 times now. The first time, I don't think I was aware. The second time, I was aware that I was different, that I was a gaikokujin, that I was on the outside, and I felt a little uncomfortable about it. And the third time, I was both aware, but also more respectful of the boundaries of being quiet on the train, of the empathy that permeates everything that the Japanese do. But my biggest reflection was the teaching observation and reflection we had. I noticed critique was given freely, almost too freely. I know we were warned ahead of time about that, but I was surprised that there was a little more opposition. I remember I feel like in my group we had to focus a few times on the positive, even though it seemed like the teacher or the principal was really a very talented teacher, and for my part was fairly immaculate. Of course, everyone can improve. But I was still surprised that someone like a principal was open to being viewed from such a new and experienced teachers and also giving feedback from us. I was also surprised that the Japanese were more blunt, at least, and more forthright with their commentary, as I was expecting them to be more circumspect. What I will take back with me as an educator is that all teaching can be improved upon. Again, a reminder that I need to constantly have repeated as a refrain in my head, no matter your rank or reputation, that empathy should permeate everything I do. That if I can continue to remind myself I don't do it because it's the right thing, but because if I was in that student's shoes or that man or woman's, how would they feel? And doing that creates a more harmonious life for everyone. My growth as an educator was clear when I had to teach a group of students and realized I had some cards up my sleeve with my language abilities, but still that barriers with language always create difficulties. So my ELL or long-term ELL students, it put me in their shoes for that moment, realizing how I must sound to them when I'm standing up in front of the class, talking, and they're sitting there listening, trying vainly sometimes to piece out what they can. So I look forward to going back to the States, back to my education wherever it is, and my teaching practices, and trying to always be aware, not let anyone on the outside drift too far away, that I can reteach or teach more simply or teach more effectively or reteach so I can reach everyone and not have that sense of feeling of frustration that even I felt despite my language abilities. On a cultural aspect, on a specific cultural aspect, when I went to Hiroshima afterwards, I believe that was really transformative as well. I found myself having a lot of really deep reflective thoughts on how it was presented and how the educational experience was shown that war was awful and atrocious, but it wasn't outcasting one society or one labeling Americans or Japanese as bad, but just that we needed to be better and do better. And I think that's something I want to take away too, that when I want to go back to America and I go back to my education and my teaching, I don't want to have to label and put my bias of what's good and what's bad. I want them to present the facts, and I want in the most clear and factual way, and the students be able to draw the inference from that, but to have a moral at the end, the same way that Hiroshima did, which was clearly that nuclear warfare is something that should never, ever, ever happen again in the history of mankind. So that lesson, to be able to also display that lesson after such a painful and horrific thing, to keep the A-bomb dome around and to keep these things around, was transformative. I left feeling a different person.